What have been the best matches and moments of 2024? As we reach the end of the calendar year, let's have a little look back. What have been the best games and what stands out to you? I'm going to go through my list in this video. I've got 6 matches written down. I'll talk you through them, but in the comments section, you can have your say on what are the games that stand out for you this year? What have been the best matches? What are the ones that really resonate when you're looking back at the last 12 months? I'll say straight out from the gate, I'm naturally looking at my list. I've got a little bit of a Northern Hemisphere bias and also an England bias because I've been lucky enough to be at all of the England home games. Although having said that, I do think Twickenham overall has been the place to be. England have had a lot of nail-biting games at home, but I'll get into the ones that have made my list. So yeah, you have your say in the comments. And also, whilst you're here, like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. I also really appreciate all of you watching throughout the year. So thank you, and I hope you have a great new year. All right, so just before I get into my list in full, an honourable mention for a game which I wanted to put in the list. I had it there at one point and it dropped out upon reflection, and that's New Zealand-Argentina Rugby Championship, that game in Wellington that Argentina won. The reason it dropped out is because we have seen Argentina win away in New Zealand quite recently. It was a great test match. It was a brilliant win for Argentina. It was worthy of being in the list of one of the best games of the year, I think, but it just dropped out, but I wanted to give it an honourable mention. Number 6 in my list, we're going Six Nations, the game actually that replaced that New Zealand-Argentina game, and that's Italy 31, Scotland 29 in the Six Nations. An Italian team that came into the championship with us all wondering, are they going to be able to kick on and back up some improved performances in the Six Nations before that? They drew against France, they beat Scotland and they beat Wales for what was a brilliant Six Nations championship for the Italians. One question for you, can they repeat it? Can they emulate it? Can they match that when it gets underway in a couple of months' time at the start of 2025? But brilliant from Italy, tight test match. Stephen Varney, I think it was, with the late try that beat the Scots. Number 6, Italy 31, Scotland 29. Brilliant, brilliant game. Coming in at number 5, this is our first mention of Twickenham in this video. And only a couple of months ago, or a month or so ago, England-New Zealand. That George Ford drop goal that just narrowly went wide of the upright. Half the stadium thought it was sailing through and it was going to be a brilliant England win against New Zealand to start their autumn, to get them up and running. Instead, it was a narrow defeat, a game that got away from them, and then we know what happened in the weeks to come, and an autumn overall that was incredibly disappointing for England, a year overall that has been incredibly disappointing. But it was a great game. I was lucky to be there for it, and some of the quality of the New Zealand play, the All Blacks weren't necessarily at their best, but they had enough. That Talea try fairly late on, whereas a brilliant finish in the corner. They hung in there, they got themselves into the lead late on, and it looked like England might be able to win it, and the drop goal sailed wide. Nervy stuff, brilliant finish, and overall a really great game as well. So England-New Zealand at Twickenham in the autumn is number 5 on my list. On to number 4, we're staying at Twickenham, and we're going a week later, England-Australia. What a game. What an unbelievable match this was. Australia winning it with the Jorgensen try, final play of the game where they had to go from 40 metres. They had to collect the restart after England had retaken the lead, go through the phases, Jorgensen left-hand side scoring the try. It's another great game with another great finish. That's why it's on this list. But I think importantly as well is it was the game that gave us all real belief in the Wallabies and where they're going under Joe Schmidt. Because let's not forget, they didn't have a great rugby championship. Argentina put, what, 60 points on them? A record defeat in Argentina. They struggled against the All Blacks and the Springboks, who are just better than them at the moment. So we're kind of wondering, where is Australia heading into next year when they host the British and Irish Lions tour? What a statement victory at Twickenham. Their first victory there in almost 10 years. And I think the manner in which they went about it was brilliant. Joseph Sualihi's debut was ridiculous. His first senior game of rugby union, like just so much stuff about that game was exciting. And it was another nervy one, tense one, and another one where England let it slip away late on. But what a great result it was for Australia. So that's in at number 4. Number 3. Honestly, this game could have been number 1. The reason it's not, and this is where it comes to my own biases, is I was at the next two games that are going to be number 1 and number 2. So South Africa, Ireland, the second test in the summer in South Africa, the Kieran Frawley drop goal to win it with the final play of the game. That is number 3 for me, but it could easily be number 1. South Africa 24, Ireland 25. What a game. As I say, I think this could well be actually the best game of the year. The two best sides in the world at the moment. A 2-match test series, South Africa winning the first test, which was also a brilliant game, by the way. Maybe that should have got on this list, you let me know. But you felt with Ireland, end of the season, away from home, long season, a lot of players who had lost the Champions Cup final and were coming off the back of that. They lose the first test. Are they going to be able to back it up? Are they going to be able to right that wrong, I suppose? And the way in which they were able to was sensational. I know from a Springboks point of view, it was certainly a game that they would have looked at and felt like they weren't quite at their best, but nonetheless, even though Ireland overall this year, I think there is a feeling that at times they've dropped off, particularly in November we maybe saw that, they are still a top quality, high quality outfit. And that drop goal from Frawley to win it, just a couple of weeks after he'd missed a drop goal in the Champions Cup final for Leinster to win it, awesome moment. And so that's in at number 3. But those of you in the comments that are saying that should be number 1 or both matches in that series should be on that list, don't really disagree with you, but this is just my personal list. So South Africa, Ireland, second test, number 3. Number 2, we're back to Twickenham. This is the final trip to Twickenham, I promise you. But actually, I still feel justified by picking this because it was another brilliant game with another brilliant finish. England 23, Ireland 22, and frankly, the peak of England's year. Coming into that game off the back of the Murrayfield match, where they'd gone to Murrayfield, they'd lost again to Scotland, there were question marks over this England team, and they went and produced their best performance under Steve Borthwick, and they had the dramatic finish with Marcus Smith knocking the drop goal over to win the game with the final play. There's been a lot of pretty tense, tight finishes, hasn't there, this year? I think we've been treated to some unreal rugby. But also that final play, actually, the way in which England were able to engineer the opportunity, given that this is an England team that we have criticised for playing within themselves, for looking nervous, for having all sorts of deficiencies. They had to go for pretty deep there. They sent Faye Waboso down the right-hand wing. They got into the 22. They recycled the ball. Like the execution of those final plays for a team that was under pressure, and then the drop goal, and that is the loudest that I've heard Twickenham. It was bouncing. It's a stadium that often has a reputation as being really corporate and a bit stale and boring. And it can be that. It obviously is really corporate. But when it's good, it's really, really good. And we saw that for that England game against Ireland. Sensational finish. It was awesome to be there. That's the reason for me it's in at number 2. But number 1, what is the number 1 moment match of the year for me? And again, I was lucky to be there. And it's not even international rugby. It's the Champions Cup final. Toulouse 31, Leinster 22. Comfortably the two best teams in terms of club rugby in the Northern Hemisphere, and also including South Africa in that as well, in kind of the URC top 14 Premiership. It went to extra time. I mentioned already Leinster had drop goals that could have won it, that they were missing, and Toulouse were able to get the job done and see it out. It was a ridiculous game. It had a ridiculous performance in it from Antoine Dupont, which people were suggesting is one of the great performances of all time. I think that match had it all, was two top quality teams. And again, I was there, so that's maybe moved the needle a little bit for me. The reason it's number 1, I think that is the best game that I saw this year. That's why it is in at the top spot. It was one of the great games of club rugby, one of the great Champions Cup finals. We've had quite a few of those, haven't we, over the last few years, with La Rochelle beating Leinster, and we tend to get pretty spoilt once you get to the business end of that competition. But for me, that is the number 1 match, the number 1 moment, personally, of 2024. So that's my list. Italy, Scotland, Italy winning in the Six Nations. England, New Zealand with the George Ford missed drop goal. England, Australia with the Jorgensen try to win it for the Wallabies late on. The second test between South Africa and Ireland in South Africa with the Frawley drop goal to win it. England beating Ireland in the Six Nations, the Marcus Smith drop goal to win it. And then Toulouse Leinster Champions Cup final, extra time, Dupont. Drama all over the place. A brilliant afternoon in North London. That's my list. What is yours? Comment down below. Let me know what are your best matches, your best moments of 2024. I appreciate you watching throughout the year, and I'll see you in the next one.